was going to be put off for another month, coming hopefully this spring. Just, I think mine might be able to help answer that. Yeah. I don't think they were quite ready or working out.
Yeah, we had a meeting with the township, and we were looking at some grant opportunities, and the timing for this meeting versus a future meeting, when those grant opportunities were better understood and fleshed out, made more sense. So I asked that we could hold off until a future meeting. And what was going to be presented was just a represent of the concept that was worked up with the assistance of the community, as opposed to, well, I mean, of course, there could have been public discussion and input, but I did ask that we hold off till we had a little bit of a better feel on a couple of funding opportunities that were coming up.
Okay. Just in general, I would like to say that as somebody that's lived in the 6th Ward for many years and was active in active in urging the township to acquire that piece of property, that was bought specifically for stormwater management. And because of that, I'm kind of curious. I see that project, and I see the middle school project where taxpayers have spent millions of dollars. And it seems to me that this group, they should be your priority projects where we've already spent a tremendous amount of money and they're not functioning. So I get concerned when I see the North Wayne Field getting all this attention. We've already spent on property we don't even own. It's a school district. So I really would urge the committee to step up and stand with the taxpayers. We paid for this property, and we'd like to see some function.
Do you remember when it was?
Let's see. The commissioners voted for stormwater management in '06 for the middle school, and the other one was in the 90s, late 90s.
Yeah, that's really what the West Wayne is really like.
And the West Wayne was a very divisive situation because one board of commissioners voted to allow it to be developed, and then a new board came in and they voted to go ahead and buy it. It ended up going to court, and actually the property, when it was bought, says it's for stormwater management. It's on the deed. So I really would like to see these projects where we've invested so much time, so many years, and see that carried through.
And it's definitely a project. I mean, we want to see not only to solve stormwater issues, but here's a chance to do something for the environment. And that's definitely something that our board is looking to do, projects like this. And that when the time is ready and they're ready to present, that we'll definitely put them on the agenda. And
I would prioritize them. I would put them at the very top.
it's not up to me, it's up to our entire committee. I know we're working on right now, trying to get some more information on certain areas that are known to flood. I can't make that decision alone, but as a committee, we're trying to put forth the projects that we feel are noteworthy, and as soon as we can get more feedback, then that's absolutely something that we'll discuss. It just wasn't ready tonight.
What I'm afraid of, I support, what the committee's trying to do. What I'm afraid of is that the legitimacy of this committee is just going to end up in the trash can, because when the taxpayers start to see that we're spending millions of dollars and decades of time for projects that are swept off to the side for whatever project is coming up today, like the North Wayne Field thing, which we've spent, what, $100,000 over the last 2 decades trying to remediate, it's bad. And I think for your legitimacy, take care of the big projects that I see you have incentives. Part of that $1.75 million for the middle school was for backyard stormwater management, BMPs. None of that happened.
Well, this is a newly formed committee. We've only been at it a little over a year, and we've been hit with a tremendous list of projects and concerns that we're trying to go through. I think we're moving forward in a good direction, and we're welcoming input from the community, and as soon as we can get more information, we can take a look at what the design is, the stormwater impacts, the environmental impacts, but until they're ready, then I think we can talk more about it. And we'll make sure that it gets on a future agenda.
A point of clarification, if I might. So the North Wayne Field is something we did not comment or have input on at all. This is a Board of Commissioners initiative, so we really have nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I've just seen it in the newspapers and I've heard people talking about it. I appreciate that. But I guess, again, just for the last time, is that it's important to me that if this committee wants to get support moving forward, that you have to take responsibility for money that has been spent, taxpayer money that's been taken, promises that have been made over years and years and years. If you want that legitimacy moving forward for these other projects, the culverts and all, it's important that you do finish what you started. Not you, writ large.
And that's what I was just going to say, that, you know, we've only been here a year, so we're taking everything into consideration. And I know there's some things that have been put forth in the past, we don't have control over it. But with what we have on our plate right now, we're going to try and do the best that we can. But we can't, unfortunately, put what was or wasn't done in the past, money-wise, time-wise, project-wise. We can just look forward, and that we'll try and move in a direction that, yes, we're going to deal with stormwater, but we're also going to deal with spending money in a correct fashion that can also benefit flooding, environment, community.
Well, neither project has, I mean, the West Wayne project, the water from Lancaster Pike and Conestoga is just dumped onto that site. That's all we have for stormwater management there. Then it overflows down South Devon, down Gallagher, and everywhere. It's a mess. In Wayne, it was never even connected, is my understanding, is that we've spent, I think 500,000 was supposed to go for backyard BMPs, and the rest was supposed to be for this detention basin. And neither of those projects have happened, but the money, I guess, has been spent, or is that part of the money that you have access to?
The funding that we have access to now has just been for the last year and going into the second year. And that's to my knowledge, from what I can recall this past year, we have put some funding towards fixing some infrastructure. We're putting some funding that is required for permitting. And we're also right now in the process of looking at what particular watershed, and I think it was the Ithan watershed that we last discussed, that at this point in time seems the highest priority, and we're looking to do a watershed analysis so that we can look at some of these projects. But it takes time. I mean, we've only been at it a year. We understand the frustration. I think that's why the township formed this committee, is so that this doesn't go left unchecked for the next 20 years.
Can I
Go ahead, Maya.
Yeah. So you know that I wholeheartedly join with you in the concern about the fact that the backyard BMPs weren't implemented. And it is a concept and an issue that I've brought forth multiple times, because I agree with you, a commitment was made to the community, and that it was determined based on scientific or on science and technical analysis by some very good consultants that the combination of the backyard BMPs was essential to go along with the middle school project if we were actually going to get a handle on the flooding problems that were happening there, that the project at the middle school site could not on its own deal with the flooding that happens there, because they couldn't handle the volume of water, and there was no system that you could put anywhere there that could handle the massive volumes of water that were coming down the hill. So we had to deal with volume up the hill, right, before it even came down the hill. And it has come up in our discussions in identifying which of the watershed, of the 3 township watersheds, where we're going to begin the analyses to look at implementation of stormwater projects sort of systemically. So it's not a project here and a project there and a project there, but how can we look at projects that will have synergistic benefits, right, by going down the watershed and sort of planning a little bit more holistically. And because of one of the reasons we picked the Ithan Creek watershed is because of the very issue that you're raising, that there was a recognition that there was a commitment, that there has been prior investment, that a part of what had been, that a significant part of the solution identified years ago was never implemented. And so we did talk about that. So I want you to know that. But I do think, too, and I think as a committee, and I don't know if I have to put it as a resolution, I think it's very, very important question that you ask. How much, it was, what was it, 1.8 million?
1.7 was approved.
1.72,
I think it was.
Yeah, so that was approved. And so I think that we should, it's a very fair question, in that we should ask as a committee for an economic accounting for how much of that 1.72 was spent on the middle school project and how much wasn't. Not, and ask the question, is the money still there? Because as I recall at the time, there was a commitment to spend those full funds. So
yeah.
Get an accounting, and just ask the question of whether or not at the time the money was set aside, and so those funds may still be available or not. And
I know you're solid on this, because when I reviewed the newspaper articles from then, you were the person that came in and advocated for the backyard BMPs. and carried the day. You had the third ward commissioner wanted just a big basin with water so he could point to it and tell his constituents, that's what I'm doing for you. But you won the day, but it never was implemented. So hopefully this board will take a look at that.
Just one more point. I feel some reason to defend the committee. The first project we did review when we started meeting was the West Wayne Preserve. And so, I mean, that is the one that is the furthest along in our deliberations in terms of knowing what it's about and, you know, and so forth. So just to say that we have looked at it, we like it very much, we want to see it happen. It's just a matter of going through the hoops.
No, I know you looked at it, but I had a feeling that it was getting kind of pushed back. And I'm glad the meetings now are televised too, because I, in the past, had to look at the minutes, which were excellent, but still, this is so much better. So I do appreciate that you're looking at it, but I mean, it's a long time since that was acquired, a long, long time ago, you know, over a decade ago, way over a decade. Thank you.
Sure.
So can I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would like to make a resolution that the question be asked about the accounting for what was actually spent on the middle school site in total?
Can we ask to look into that?
Let's ask for it.
Okay.
You're right.
Remember Steve gave us
I think you're right. I think he did give us some accounting.
But I don't think that I think the accounting was part and parcel of the spreadsheet where it was sort of numbers. I don't think we got the kind of analysis that Mr. Layfield is, you know, has put forth and that I would envision to genuinely just answer the question. So if I need to put it in the form of a resolution, I will. If you think we can just do it as a question, I'll write down the question.
Oh, I think we
For the
can. We
notes.
can talk to Steve about.
All right.
Yeah, till Steve comes and we can ask him.
Well, just to keep
Because
things.
I do not remember anything near $1.8 million in any spreadsheet.
No, not spent, no.
Right. So I think it's a fair question. We just ask Steve, and then I don't think there's a need for a resolution. We'll just go through Radnor and find out what.
But I don't think we can expect him to know the answer in the
I was going
moment.
to say, why don't we just ask for it for the next meeting? I mean,
Right.
I don't know if we need a resolution, but
Yeah.
we can ask for it for the next meeting.
Hello, my name's Gail Guthlon. I live at 105 Banbury Way. I'm just here tonight to let you guys know that we recently submitted some video and some pictures to Steve Norsini regarding the flooding on Banbury and Francis Way. My husband and I have lived at the property for nearly 5.5 years, and over that time, the water level, we've seen it come nearly up to our home, about 17 feet up our property. We've seen countless cars flooded in the streets, children playing in the streets, in the water in the streets, and I just wanted you guys to have the opportunity to review that, to realize the severity of the situation at Banbury and Francis intersection.
And Steve did. He sent me an email that he's going to get, he said it was a large vial, and that we'll make sure the committee members get the picture and see the video. It was just something that happened today when I talked to him, and we just couldn't get the information to everyone. But it's something that I'll make sure everyone gets an email or color copies and takes a look at the video so that we can provide you some feedback.
Okay.
But that's another item that's on our prioritized list as an
Yes.
identified
Yes,
problem
it
area.
is.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
I realize it's been a problem for a long time, and we've been trying to document it to make sure it can be a prioritized project. And I'm glad to see this committee is coming together. And if you need any additional feedback or evidence, please let us know.
Great. Thank you very much.
Heather, that newspaper article that you received, can you please make sure that that's circulated to the entire committee and is part of the public record?
Yes, I will. I'll make it part of the record. I'll scan it and email it to everyone in the next week. Any other public comment? Okay. I would like to switch things around just a little bit. I would like to talk about the residential incentive program first, just because I think having Steve here would be valuable for the stormwater administrator. There are questions or things that come up. Paige is not going to be here tonight. She did email me one comment, which I discussed with the subcommittee. The subcommittee, and I don't know if the public, there are copies on the table if you're interested in taking a look. has put together a draft of a residential incentive program for homeowners. And there's 3 pages to it. They did a really great job in putting together something we're hoping to receive approval from the board this summer, so that, if not sooner, to be implemented.
Did you want me to?
Would you like to
Sure.
start it off?
So there are 4 pages, actually. The first is a letter to the Board of Commissioners outlining our program that Joe put together. There is also a kind of a poster flyer kind of thing that we put together just as a mock-up for what we might do. The wording and the pictures and all that are completely up in the air, but this is roughly what we were thinking about, just based upon what we found there. And then the last thing is this incentive application form that we put together. And I will say, as the person who wrote this and working with the other 3 members, Joe and Charles and Maya, was we took a kitchen sink approach to incentive types, as in we put down all that we think might be considered. There are various opinions about how many we should have and how much they should get, but this is a rough estimate of where we might go. We put down what we think might be the requirements for the different types that we came up with. There's some legalese at the end that we probably need some clarification on at some point, but again, it's all a mock-up. So we ask for thoughts. Maybe we could just start with incentive types and the amount as a comment. I'm just going to ask Joe to start because he has opinions. So I know he has opinions.
I have tons of opinions. Well, I think we should probably, just to give you a little more color commentary, so what we've talked about as a board is residential incentives for single-family residents, which we call SFR, which are called SFRs, so you'll hear us use that term. And then there's ODCs, right, which are other developed ODPs, other developed properties. So that would be everything from Villanova University to a condominium complex. And we're only addressing the first of those that I talked about, SFR, single-family residence. So this would be qualified for anybody that owned the single-family residence in Radnor. And the idea is it would be incentive so that you would get a refund on a portion of something that you implemented to help stormwater. And so I think there's several things that the board needs to consider. And probably in order, the first one is how much in a percentage do we want to set aside from the SFR fee/tax that we get in every year to be used for SFR incentives? That's the first question. And then the second question is what type and how much? And then the third question is when and how. And so the combination of all these documents give us all that, right? But these were all, we kind of threw in numbers here without really, we put thought behind it, but it certainly wasn't discussed at the board level, so.
Joe, can I just ask, because you said something I hadn't thought about before, so you would like, or proposing that we talk about the percentage that we get from SFRs, not the total fee.
I said that, but I don't know that that's true.
Okay.
I think it's to start that discussion, we've thrown a number down here, and one could argue that we put aside a certain percentage of the total dollars we get in, and we use it for SFR and ODP.
Yeah.
That would give us the most flexibility to try to attack the problem with but I think in realistic terms, I don't know that we would have a ODP credit program ready in calendar year 15. But I do think we'd have an SFR. You had said summer, but I think we had talked about getting this to the board roll out the spring, summer, when people are digging in their yards.
I agree. I would like to put forth something to the board, even if let's say they vote on it at a March or even late April meeting, that still would give residents enough time to understand the program, be aware of the program, and to implement what they feel be appropriate at their
Right.
home. But I agree, I think we should, with the ODPs, we should wait to get input from the stormwater administrator firm. I think that that's going to be very valuable to us, to the committee.
So what's on the memo, I think, is 5%, if I remember right. So 5% of $1 million, which is what we get in stormwater fees, is $50,000. So do we think that's an appropriate amount, too much, too little?
Go ahead, Regina.
The way I look at it, I'd also like to have a better idea of each particular proposal and what the benefit it actually is
At the lower level.
for us in terms of either water quality, stormwater management. So the total figure of 50,000 makes sense as far as a portion of our budget, as long as the types of things we're promoting provide
Right.
an equivalent benefit to something if we were to spend the money ourselves on a
That
project.
makes sense.
The only thing about that, Regina, is just a couple of things. First off, for a rain garden, for example, right, we're not going to be able to do a calculation on water quantity and water quality benefits because it's all dependent, as you know, right, on the size of the rain garden and the vegetative options and the soils and the location and all of those things. So for rain barrels, if we have like a minimum size, we may have some capacity to do some work on that, but some of them would be difficult to come up with that. Just one thought. And another thought is, the other thing is, we're really talking about, the way I'm envisioning it anyway, given the sums of the reimbursements we're talking about, we're sort of talking about a match program, right? Like I imagine a lot of these projects, except for perhaps the rain barrel, but for like the rain garden, we're offering a $100 incentive. Now, it might be that somebody only spends $50 on plants and that's all they get reimbursed for. But I think that probably there are going to be a significant number of times when somebody might spend $150 in terms of creating their rain garden, or perhaps even $200. And the reason they're doing that is because they're getting this $100 incentive. And then when they get into it, they really enjoy it. They add more plants. They do, a really bang up job. So that's part of it too, is in terms of the $50,000, I actually see whatever the sum is, and I don't know if 50,000 is the right number, by the way, but whatever the sum is of our investment, I think that it's not going to fully characterize the amount of economic value that we're getting from all of these projects, because I do think people are probably going to end up, as I said, investing more than the value of the incentive. So we might get $100,000 worth of costs towards projects for a $50,000 investment, just by way of, round figure examples. So I hear you, and I think, it's certainly valuable to find some way to bring some additional information forward. It's just, how much we can do. I'm not sure, and be interested to know what how we might work around some of these things.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think with the dollars that we are putting forward for some of the things, clearly it's going to be a bigger cost to those folks who choose to do that. However, things like the permeable pavement, are we requiring them to remove pavement to get that credit, or is that if someone's building new? Or that's those kind of things. Maybe the dollar value is higher if they're replacing already something.
We talked about the permeable pavement, but if you're going to go permeable pavement, you're going to spend way more. And you're not just going to go on top and lay permeable pavement on top of asphalt. You're not going to lay it on top of the existing stone bed. If you're going to go to that expense to put in a permeable pavement, you're going to dig it out. First of all, you're going to make sure that the ground will accept the groundwater, because otherwise, why would you do it? Not for $200. So, this is such a minor encouragement.
Can I?
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking questions. I don't have a fixed idea. It's just if, say, you have a $200 credit and that exceeds that person's fee for the year, so they're getting more than their money back. So we are setting, a percentage, and that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of understand getting the most for our money. It's like, say we were able to partner with someone who provided rain barrels to us at a very low cost, and then we're giving back, giving those out for free rather than buying them at cost or something. That makes it more attractive. So not necessarily in this year, because we're going to kind of find out what the interest level is and where that interest level is. But as we move forward, I'd like to kind of keep in mind always that we'd like to see the return on that money be more than what we would be able to spend if we contracted out a project with that money. I guess that's what I'm suggesting.
So to move things along, maybe the best thing, because we've kind of hit on different items, maybe we could go down different items, because I think some we'll agree on right away, and some we may have a lot of discussion on. So I'd like to throw out the fact that I think rain barrels and cisterns of anything on this list are concrete, and I don't mean that completely, but they're concrete in what you're doing with them. They're very clear what you're using them for, and I think they provide a lot of benefit from my experience with them. So I just picked those two out as, to me, the ones that, to me, if you asked me to choose two out of this list, they would be the two I would choose. And I don't know if other people feel the same way, but maybe we could, if we agree we're doing an SFR program, maybe we go down a list and try to figure out what makes the most sense, because I'd rather start smaller and simpler than, so.
Those are easier to track.
Right.
I guess the other thing too is the rain barrel, we can do one or two, is that what we're saying? How are we going to decide who gets the credits when if we exceed? Do we have a plan? If we have a demand exceeding our fixed cost,
plan,
do we put them into next year?
The plan we talked about previously that I think even makes more sense now that we have soon to be an SFR administrator was that to minimize administrative cost and to not buy things that maybe people would never end up wanting, we hope they want them, we would just incentivize the homeowner by giving them a refund. And the refund would be an application process that would be managed by our SFR administrator. And so if they paid $60 for a rain barrel, they'd get a $50 refund check from Radnor Township via the administrator after they showed a receipt, and that's kind of how this form is laid out.
Would we be able to take it so far as to credit that towards their next, so that we don't have them having to put out checks? Give them a credit on their
Yeah, but they've already paid. Our thought
balance
was
for
that they already
next
paid
year.
for it, and they showed, oh, yeah, I see.
so that they don't pay
Yeah,
next
maybe once
year
we
or
had the
something like
administrator,
that.
if that was
Because
easy enough
it's
to do.
whatever works, whatever's easiest for
Yeah.
them. I think they can work
Right.
that out.
But that would be the idea, is that, and so that's why.
Yeah, rather than, we wouldn't actually have any inventory that way.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Now,
Could
now we may partner with somebody in, Wayne who sells them and say, hey, here's 2 local businesses that sell them. I think that would be a great way to get local business participation. But you
Could-
still go and buy it.
Could we hold off a little bit on the specifics of how we're going to implement it, whether it's a future credit, a past credit, or a payback, and really focus on what the incentives should be for first? Because the other is sort of a practical, functional kind of thing, and I do think we want the input of the administrator on what is going to be the simplest way to do that, and as a result, because it's more straightforward, the most economical way to handle it in terms of their time and resources, right? So I would rather hold off on that, and let's just talk about the actual incentives. And if we could do it one by one, because I see a cistern and a rain barrel as infinitely different, and I don't see a cistern as necessarily more easily enforceable than an above-ground item like a rain garden. So if we could do them rather than pairing them as you had, go through one by one, I would appreciate that.
And do we have agreement that we're going to do rain barrels? And
All in favor,
and is up to 2 okay? I was just thinking about, if you're going to have someone buy one, you have one for one side of the house, one for the other side of the house, and,
I have a rain barrel, and they do fill up quick.
yeah.
I think having 2 would be a good idea.
And you would have used to?
What?
If you did it again, would you have put into?
Yeah, I'm looking to get a second one this spring, yeah. All right, yeah, I have one, it's great. We water the garden, wash the car, it's fantastic.
Good
You have
advertisement.
little kids too, they like to play with it.
Yes, they do. No, but I think having two is a good idea, because you could have one in the front, one in the back, two in the front, depending what your grading's
Yeah.
like.
And is the $50 reasonable, as best we know?
The rain barrel that I purchased was at the Do It Best in Wayne, and it was a larger rain barrel.
So what-
and I
what
think I
gallon
paid like
size?
$90 for it, so.
We talking 55 gallon?
I think it's bigger than that. I think it's
Oh.
like a 75. It's a good
Okay.
size.
Why, if you're requiring that you show an installation, why would you limit the number of rain barrels?
Just, right, just so that maybe everyone who wants to put two could put two, as opposed to if we get a
Do you think you're going to get $50,000 worth of rain barrels?
Well, take
Well,
50,000.
not just for rain barrels, but for other things on the list.
Yeah, but that's still a lot.
Still a lot.
I would like to just
if you
propose
got
the idea that this is a moving target. We're going to do this the first year, and then we're going to come back and say, well, maybe 3 rain barrels. But, so if we just say 2 as a target and then move on, I think that'd be,
Well, I guess the other thing is the one time, we say that you can only participate one time. So how do we handle that if we decide that later on we want to see more? That's kind of tricky.
yeah, I hear you. So that's a question.
But I think agreeing with let's try to focus on the items first and then the implementation second.
Do we want to say a minimum size for the rain barrels? Do we want to?
I think we do.
Have a specification?
It says 45, if you look under application requirements, minimum 45 gallon.
But you were saying yours is much larger than that.
Right, mine's bigger than that.
But you're going to have different homeowners with different size lots and different capacities. So I think having a minimum makes sense, but not expecting everybody to get the bigger one is helpful for different people with different sensitivities.
And just the fact that they're willing to do it and do something for the community, I mean, whether it's 50 or 75, they're taking the right step to doing something right.
So I hear 1 or 2, minimum 45 gallons, and we all like rain barrels.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. So what do you want to hit next?
I'd
right.
like to hit the rain garden myself because I think the rain garden is incredible value added. It provides water quantity benefits, it provides water quality benefits, it provides short-term and long-term benefits, it provides other habitat values for the community and aesthetic values for the community. And in order to be involved in the creation of a rain garden, there's a learning curve that I think is really helpful from our perspective in getting homeowners to better understand stormwater issues and the different ways they can contribute towards helping to manage it so it doesn't become a problem. So I think that rain gardens have a lot of value added in addition to the quality and quantity that makes them in my mind, a high priority opportunity to offer people.
Now, is there a certain size?
Well, so I wrote minimum, and again, this comes from another document that I just borrowed from. I wrote 100 square feet, so that'd be 10 by 10. I don't know, we didn't really specify a depth. I mean, I don't know. This is like totally up in the air about how you calculate these things. Maya, is there some way of saying how big is there a volume that's specified, or is it just an area that you occupy?
I think that those are important details for a number of these things, including for the cistern, including for porous paving. There are a whole lot of other elements that would have to be discussed and articulated for people. I think maybe if we can do the concepts tonight, because those details we're not going to decide tonight. But yes, we should have very clear-cut. Rain barrels was easy, but all of these items need some clarity on the specifications so people really understand. You're going to need to specify native plants. You need to. So if maybe we can go with the concepts and then the specifications we can work on with the stormwater administrator or between meetings and then bring that forward later.
I mean, I'm fine with rain gardens as long as there's a minimum size. Just a little hole in the ground is not going to do it. We have to have something that has, to point to Regina's point, that has significance in terms of having an impact.
And it's funny that you say that because I would much prefer us to be funding rain gardens than rain barrels.
Okay.
Because I feel like they have a much greater benefit.
Is anybody opposed to rain gardens? Then, okay. Move on.
And you said 10 by 10? I just didn't see where.
Well, it's I put all the specifications down to application requirements.
Oh, right there. Okay, thanks.
So I just said 100 square feet. And again, to Maya's point, I just want to put something down that says there is a minimum. Well, why don't we say permeable payment for last? Cisterns. Joe, speak about your cistern.
I love my cistern.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really worked well for, I mean, you know, I've talked about it previously, it's really worked well. It captures the rainwater that would otherwise be sitting in my yard or going somewhere else. So I have a lot of, I think it's a good thing. And it would cost more than $100 to get installed, so.
I was going to ask you, what was your installation cost, if you have any idea?
He did it
It
manually.
was zero, it was manually done by me.
Yeah, but the
When I was
cost of-
younger and stronger and stupider, yeah, no.
Did you have materials cost? Or?
Yeah, it was probably about $100 material cost, but, you know, it was a weekend of digging and reseeding, you know.
I think Cistern offers to the range of educational opportunities and understandings for people. It does provide some good quantity benefits. And again, like with the others, as long as we end up providing some minimum specifications and some stats on, you know, how you have to do it, I think that there's great value. The one thing, and truthfully, I don't want to get bogged down in worrying about this, but I will mention it, even though I probably shouldn't. Virginia's looking at me like, don't mention it if you're, I mean, there is the truth, though, that for some cisterns to operate, right, they have to be connected, right? Depends what you're flowing to it, but that they have to be connected. So at some point, we should be talking about whether or not people need to, you know, just annually or biannually or every 5 years submit a statement just on their honor, no inspections, on their honor. I've taken a look at my cistern, it's still hooked up and still functioning, period. And not that they're going to be punished if it's not, but I do think there's value in that ongoing self-inspection and reporting to the township to let us know how our program is working.
What incentive would you offer to do that?
To do the annual check, I guess I wouldn't, I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. I just think that I don't know that we want to punish people for not doing it, but I do think that we want to encourage them to do it because the cistern has lost its value if it's not hooked up, just like the Radnor Middle School. It hasn't lost its value. There's a lot of hookup to the middle school, but to the extent you have a system that's not hooked up, right, you have loss of value. So.
Mike, could you clarify hooked up?
Well, if you have, for example, if somebody's having their cistern is constructed so that it's handling their rooftop runoff, right? And so then their rooftop runoff has to be directed to the system in order for it to receive the water and have that value, if that's how it's constructed. But if you have, you know, a homeowner 3 years down the road decides that, I don't know, they don't like the way it's situated anymore, and then they suddenly put in a gutter that directs the rainfall to their driveway, which takes it down to the road, which takes it down to the stormwater system, which dumps it out into the local creek, well then, you know, we've lost all value. And again, it's more also a sort of a tracking for us. Like how is this incentive program working? Is it working merely short term, or is it really working long term, both in terms of quantity and quality, but also community understanding and participation in helping to address this problem and their contribution to the stormwater runoff issues of the township?
Well, I think the residents who are going to put in a cistern are generally concerned about their property and runoff, and it's great that they'll be getting a credit, but I think they're doing it to solve runoff problems on site. So yes, there is the case where a homeowner down the road, there's a new homeowner, they might not, you know, continue with the maintenance of it, which would be a shame. I don't know if, you know, if we can track that, but I think, you know, anyone who's going to do this probably has best intentions of dealing with runoff if they're going to spend the type of money that you're going to need to spend, or the crazy homeowner labor that you have put in, Joe, to do that. You would think that they would continue to maintain it. And hopefully that, it wouldn't be a problem.
But you do have things that happen. I mean, most people are familiar with gutters, right? Like gutters fill up with leaves, and then the pathway for the runoff is blocked, and the water then goes in a different direction. So it may not be that it's intentional. It may just be, people aren't thinking about it. When they put their cistern in, they didn't realize, gee, I better maintain it. But if they had to once a year or once every 2 years, just do a self-reporting, I took a look, it's still functioning, I'm really pleased at how it's functioning, and maybe even get some additional feedback. It provided XYZ benefit to me, or I noticed XYZ change. If they wanted to offer a comment, that would again help us in our understanding of the benefits of our program.
Can I just ask, it seems to me a more general question of those things that can be changed when a new homeowner comes in and doesn't understand what it's about. Is this something where we just hope that it gets addressed, or do we somehow have some mechanism for checking?
And I think one of the things we can do is that we can include in newsletters that Radnor sends out quarterly things to do, reminders like batteries changing in the fall. There are things we can do. And now that we will have a list of people who have this cistern, is send out a polite reminder, say, it's fall, leaves are coming, gutters can be clogged. We want to make sure that what you installed is working the best possible. As a polite reminder, please, do X, Y, and Z, just to get the ball rolling and to politely remind people that, there is going to be maintenance with that. You don't just put it in the ground and you're done. And that might be a way. And now that we have a list, we could put something out a year later that says, you took part of our residential incentive program. How's it going? What feedback have you gotten? Do you think that it's working to reduce runoff? And put forth something maybe a year later.
So how about in keeping with the diversion I requested not happen and then made happen? We go back to just going through the list and note this concept, and then perhaps as we, when we're talking about specifications and some other implementation issues, consider coming back to this at a later date, but continue going down the list. So going with Joe's strategy.
I like the cistern.
Is anybody opposed to a cistern? No.
Madam Chairman, if I may just chime in. So I know what you're talking about, and obviously, I guess eventually we want to do more than just a voluntary check on all these, these little small BMPs. So that might be something that gets funded, later on. But leads me to my bigger question, because I just received a few appeal requests, and I have to make sure I bring it back to this committee, because I always tell the folks I will. Folks that have underground stormwater management systems based on our 2005 stormwater ordinance, because of their new construction or additions done to their house, do continually ask for credits. So I know we're dealing with SFRs, and that isn't, but I have promised these folks that I would always bring it to the Stormwater Committee to keep it in front of you, something to remember. But that also goes forth with what we were talking about at one point. One of our neighboring townships requires that those stormwater management systems are inspected, and it's detailed that they do operate. That's costly. It costs some money to do, but that might be some type of incentive, because some of these were put in, an easy 10 years ago. Nobody's been inside them. So if there is an incentive to those folks to get them inspected based on what they're paying, it's just something to think of. Lastly, one real easy one to do is the short circuit, where your downspout goes to your driveway, and Maya had touched on it. I didn't see that on here. Maybe I missed it. Okay, because that's a nice easy one, and it only costs a few dollars to spin your gutter around.
Thank you for that vote of support.
Speaking of stormwater diversion to garden. So Maya, why don't you say a little bit, you're the one that put this out, so you can talk about this.
This is just, right now it's very common that people have their rooftop runoff direct it to their driveways, which take it to the road, which take it to the storm drain, which take it out to the creek. And so a diversion really, it can be done a variety of ways, but pretty much you can just do it with getting a nice little, sort of plastic thing to put on the end of your gutter, and that takes the rainfall out of your driveway and puts it into your garden so that it has an opportunity to go and infiltrate into the soil, sit there while it soaks in, be absorbed by plants. There are a couple of different ways to do it. I mean, truthfully, some of those fixes, you're talking $7, right?
That's what I was going to say. Maybe $50 is too much, or?
Well, again, but we're not giving people $50 for a $7 fix, right? It's the receipt. They would be getting reimbursed. But if you do have a situation where you have, perhaps people have a couple of leads to a driveway just by the virtue of how their property's configured, that, maybe they end up, buying 3 of these, or maybe they do something a little bit better even, where they have it, where their gutter runoff is ending up in soaker hoses that are going through their garden, where you're going to have greater infiltration capacity there and sort of more short-term, long-term benefits. So that might be a little bit more of a more costly solution. It's really going to depend upon the configuration of the property and how far the homeowner is willing to go. But $50, is definitely a good incentive to get somebody to do a good job with this. And if not, if they just want to, do the basics and get it out of their driveway into their garden, this could fully cover the cost for them. So I think it's value added, and it's good educational opportunity too.
So we wrote up to $50 for this one. And I don't know if we would match something or if we would pay for the whole thing. I mean, it sounds like it could be you pay for the whole thing. If we want to go
We're
that
not
way.
paying anything for them actually installing it.
Yeah.
So for materials, we would reimburse them for whatever their costs up to $50, and then they're on their own too. They can't submit a receipt because they had it installed.
Right, okay. It sounds like we're okay with that? Yeah, okay. Swales. We'll just put or land depression. Again, I think my main concern here is defining what it is. How would you specify what's an appropriate size? I mean, I have a bump in my yard. Is that a swale, or what is that?
I think the vegetative swale is a great way to deal with stormwater. I just think this one's going to be a little harder to quantify. How long's the swale, the width of the swale, the vegetation of the swale. I mean, it's a great opportunity to divert water away from an impervious surface and to keep it on a grass area. It just might be harder to quantify how long does that swale have to be, the slopes, the material, was just my only concern.
Now, this one says that you'd be not only directing water to a swale, but planting the swale for stormwater. Isn't that really making it sort of a rain garden too?
I did wonder that myself.
So I'm wondering if we can't, because that's very difficult to define, why not delete that one and continue with the rain garden? Because 100 square feet is not very much.
Right.
It's certainly going to take out a swale, most swales anyway.
Yeah, so as a person who also put forth that concept, I see great value in it, a lot of benefits in it, but I also hear what you're saying, Chuck, about some of the complications associated with the swale. And so for this first year, that really just orienting people towards the rain garden makes a lot of sense, and take that off the table for this year.
Great. Where are we? Trees. So the way it specifies native trees or shrubs planted within 100 feet, I guess that would be perpendicular, I don't know, to a perennial stream, which is defined as stream that has a base flow year-round. So it can't be intermittent. Again, I'll point to Maya's, and you could say more, because she was the one who gave all this specification, so.
So again, this is one I'm really betwixt and between on, and a lot of this, the reason for the 100 feet is it doesn't go exactly with the science, but all of the current science is that in order to get maximum benefits from a water quantity and water quality perspective, streams need a minimum of 100-foot forested buffers. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about merely planting some plants within 100 feet. But that's why the 100 feet is just sort of to be going along with that concept of having vegetation within 100 feet from the from the stream edge, and of course, the closer, the better. And it would be, perpendicular from the bank. The stream vegetation, the way I hear some of our best engineers describe a tree is they're the best water pumps we have, right? Trees suck up an amazing amount of water. Of course, more is better. So what we would get from a tree is or a combination of trees and shrubs is we would get volume. In terms of the trees sucking up the water, we would get infiltration because we would have the enhanced soil properties that the deep root systems provide, so you would have better soils for infiltration purposes. We would have, if the tree is in closer proximity to the creek, you would have the shading, which has habitat benefits and temperature control benefits and other benefits for the creek. We start to me, a lot of this, there are some very direct benefits from a water quantity and water quality perspective, but again, it's also that educational bonus that comes with getting people to understand why we would be giving an incentive for a tree in proximity to the creek. On the other hand, the other thing that we had talked about previously, and which is not captured here, is we had talked about the tree giveaway program. If we're still talking about doing that program, carrying that off, then I could see that as sort of a good substitute for the incentive approach.
Yeah, I think,
I agree.
Joe, did you take the tree giveaway is still in the letter? So we kind of have a mismatch between the letter and the.
These were just all the ideas.
Right.
I think that we could put that with the tree giveaway, and that we could look at, especially for some of the flooding in creek areas, is putting forth a list of trees that would do well. And I think that would be easier to quantify than here, although I can appreciate all the benefits. I just think it's going to be harder to quantify that. With
I agree.
Just so the commission knows, so we had a tree giveaway last year, and we're doing another one this year, and this is in conjunction with funds provided by Chanticleer and Kimberly Donchez of the Radnor Conservancy. So we're actually doubling the number of trees we're going to give away this year. But since you're mentioning that, we can all put in our notes for next year's tree giveaway. That could be a joint another member in that, and you folks can get your educational message out along with the tree giveaway.
But
Since you already have a started project.
But we could get the education out at no cost to this committee.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm saying if we're giving out the trees and you partner along with the other program, that could now, instead of giving out 200 trees, you can give out 300 or 400, and you can have whatever educational items you wish. But the process has started. I just wanted to let you know.
Is there any potential to consult on the types of trees given based on water benefits for stormwater, but also for native species?
Well, we do native species now.
Okay.
But they're not necessarily wet-footed trees. Okay. So maybe that's part of next year's program. If the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee gets in, you can get even more specific with the species of the trees.
But even maybe selecting trees that have a greater benefit as far as their root systems take more water, rather than
Absolutely.
having to be planted near a stream. I mean, but that's something that if we, is it too late for us to partner with them this year?
It is.
Is it already?
Is
it, when is it's in the spring?
It's in April.
Oh, yeah.
and
I was thinking it was in the fall. Okay.
The purchase order was approved, the order's
Oh,
been put
sure.
in.
So then for next year, definitely.
Right, so early
it's-
next winter.
We need to
connect the
start
two
talking
groups.
now for next year. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Steve, how many trees do you normally order for a giveaway like this?
Last year was the first year, and I think we did 100, and I think we had 10 spare, and they were all gone very quickly. I mean, there's a sign up and there's a whole protocol. This year we've ordered 225, and we don't think there's going to be any problem in having people take them.
So let me, Regina, just clarify. I thought I heard you say that you don't want us to specify near a stream. We just want to give away trees that are wet-footed.
I would prefer that we give away trees because of the stormwater element, but then when we're starting to think about water quality, I think the way Maya has set it up, we get more of a water quality benefit. So
Okay.
there may be benefit to doing both.
Okay, okay.
I mean, either way, you're getting a tree with all the qualities that Maya brought up. You get evapotranspiration, increase in the township's canopy, which has decreased over the years. So maybe your educational component is for the people who are getting them, if you have a stream that runs through your property, there's the incentive to get them to do that as opposed to maybe in their front yard.
Maybe what we want to consider doing is using some of these funds for advertising and making sure that township residents know this is going on and the reasons for it. Because 100 people or 100 trees were taken last year, not too many people knew about that program. Especially if you're going to double that and expect us for all of them to go away. So if we spend some money to really advertise this thing, we might have quite a successful program.
Could I just offer two things? So maybe one thing, if we have the Shade Tree Commission and others offering sort of upland trees, which is, it sounds like what they're doing, right? So trees, upland trees that can be pretty much planted anywhere except not where there's a lot of water, right? That maybe we offer trees and shrubs, and the only species that we offer are those that are water loving, that would be appropriate next to a stream, near or in a wetlands, so that it becomes very clear, and that when a homeowner's coming in, we ask, are you in the uplands, or do you have a creek, and you'd be willing to plant near a creek? Are you willing to plant near a creek? Well, come pick one of these trees or shrubs, right? And so that can be a way that we can offer education, we can complement the pre-existing program, but we can bring something new and different to it rather than just more trees. And it's also a way that we can really be encouraging those streamside plantings, because the trees we're offering are intended primarily for streamside planting, for quality, for quantity, and also, again, the erosive, I hadn't mentioned that, but the erosive effects. So, we have a lot of residents that do have grass right up to their creeks, and so those creeks, the stream banks are sloughing in and eroding away and doing a lot of damage to the creek. They're washing away those public and private lands. It's doing a lot of harm. If people could come in and get a shrub or a tree that has the good root systems intended to prevent that harm from happening, then one, we're getting the benefit of preventing the harm, but two, they will actually be able to see the benefits. And so maybe the next year they'll plant 3 or 4 or 5 of their own.
Okay.
And that was going to be my question. If there is a tree giveaway, is there something else like a shrub that we could do something a little different, but
So, but
Yeah,
this would be
keeping with-
part of, we would be doing it as part of their program. In other words, we're not doing our own giveaway. That's what I think I hear.
I think we would partner with them. I mean, it makes
But it
perfect
would,
sense.
yes, right, so it all
Because
happened
it's
at the same
already
time.
in motion,
Right.
and to,
Yes,
partner, I
I'm all
think
in
is.
favor of that.
So back to the SFR incentive program for 15.
So I'm thinking we table the tree element.
Yeah, I'd like to say that we scratch this off the list for this year.
I agree.
Do we agree?
Okay. And let's talk about permeable pavement.
Let's talk about permeable pavements. So I could start this off.
Sure, shoot.
Says Steve. So I'm a Radnor homeowner, and I've got a backyard, and I've got nothing in my backyard, but I decide to go and put a E.P. Henry paver in, and it's 10
You're not
by,
off the hook.
and it's 10 by 10.
You're not off, well,
Do I?
so the way the ordinance works, it's
So it's 10 by 10.
under 500 square feet, it's really voluntary. So you're well below the threshold.
Okay, so then I could basically worsen my stormwater situation and get a credit if I had grass there before.
Well, if you really want to take a real close
Get
look at,
get it, because you didn't ask what I had there before.
if you look at your soil cover, honestly, in some places, especially, in some recreational areas, your soil cover can be so packed and so dense that okay, so as engineers, we go to our charts and we look at all the different numbers for forest and soil and all that good stuff. But depending on where that soil is, I did a project near a high school in a breezeway, and the soil was like concrete, literally like concrete.
Yeah, but
So there's minimal, so you could better your situation conceivably with that, depending on your soil conditions.
I threw you a curve. I threw you a softball because I put in a 25 by 15 EP Henry system around the same time as the cistern. And there was a very small thing there that was, so I basically tripled the size of my impervious coverage, really. But, that was okay, and I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm happy I did it. But I guess my only point is that I would have gotten the credit for stormwater for doing something that was,
Well, not all EP
yeah, I was
Henry.
just gonna say,
You
there's
used the
EP
porous
Yeah.
pavers?
yeah.
me,
and-
EP
and
Henry's
covered
not
over-
a porous.
And covered over grass.
Yeah, but EP
So if it's porous pavers, what are they saying the percent of water that goes through is it? Did they give you a percentage?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I'm
You can
assuming-
use brick
Some Joe
pavers
is
that are no
assuming-
better than an asphalt
Right,
driveway.
I'm assuming that like a paver,
No, impervious wouldn't be cut, it obviously wouldn't be a credit.
but it's grouted with sand between it.
Sand is
But that's
permeable.
not porous. That wouldn't be considered porous paving.
The porous paving actually has little
See,
tiny
I'd be-
gaps.
We're
ignorant.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's the
I
problem.
think we need to
So-
send an inspector to Joe's house on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, there's- no, don't do that.
I think what you brought up is a very good point. I think this one needs to wait another year. I think there's an education component that has to come first.
Okay.
I didn't know what a cistern was.
So that we can
2 months
really,
ago.
if
So
we're really
not all
going to
pavers are
expect to see a
impervious, or the hole in the
benefit,
ground.
education has to come first for that one. I mean,
Not all pavers are porous.
and some ways of installing them would be more beneficial than others too.
I'm fine with that. Again, for completeness, I wanted it in there, but I think it sounds complicated from what I can tell. Me and Joe are in the same boat, so that's good by me.
So we have 4 then. We have the rain barrels, we have the rain garden, we have cistern, and the stormwater diversion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, with a certain minimum, whatever it's going to be. Other parts of the documents, we asked for, so we give them the specifications or the requirements. We asked them to sign. And again, I think that we'll have to have somebody legal look at that kind of thing to see what needs to be said. We figured they'd be sent to the stormwater administrator or emailed, and have a contact for questions.
And I guess that was going to be my next question. Are we going to wait until we give it to the stormwater, or are we going to put forth a memorandum to the board to get this moving so that we can get this
Second one.
going?
Yeah, we had thought that if we agreed, that's why we drafted this, that we would go forward with the stormwater incentive program for SFRs, and the implementation would be one of the first things out of the box by the stormwater administrator.
But before we propose it, we're going to have specifications for the ones we're proposing, right? I mean, we can communicate that this is
This memo
a,
isn't written that way. This memo is written, basically, if we want to go to that, it's written that it's more of a, we recommend SFR incentives because they're a benefit. We recommend this percentage of the total SFR be done. Here's an example, but we didn't get in, this memo doesn't say like, a rain garden shall be this big, or we kind of considered that like an implementation detail.
that's true, it would be, but I guess I would feel better if we had those details because I think they're going to want them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that out of fairness to the Board of Commissioners, my recommendation is you would show them this end product so that they can look at it, review it, and if they approve it, they know exactly what they're approving. They're not approving the theory. They're approving, and then if that's approved, you can start as soon as you wish.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we've all asked a lot of really good questions today, and we couldn't even answer all of our own questions because we haven't done that additional work. So I think it's very important. And the worst thing that happens is that this program doesn't happen this year. And so those funds remain for the use of other good stormwater projects in the municipality. Maybe we can still get it done this year, maybe we can't, but it's not that those funds are then going to disappear. They're just going to remain available to us to do other good things with for stormwater.
Well, let me ask this. Is there a way to do a kind of a hybrid of that? We've picked 4 things. Could we move forward with 2 that we feel like a rain barrel? I mean, that's pretty cut.
How are you going to administrate that?
Well,
If you don't have your
Again, our assumption was that we weren't going to get immediate approval overnight by the Board of Commissioners, that would take them, And I think, from what I heard tonight, we have agreement on rain barrels completely, including down to their specification. We have a proposal.
I actually wanted to have another question on the rain barrel.
Okay.
So just a quick one. With the $50, is that if it costs $50, we're giving $50, or is it 50% of the cost? Did you give any thought to that?
We were thinking, I was thinking anyway, just $50.
Yes. That,
Do we have any
because that's what
idea?
we see.
Do we have any idea what a 45-gallon rain barrel
Yeah,
costs?
It's between like $60 and $70.
So no matter what, it's going to be
Right.
less than the total cost.
Well, but we don't know that, right?
Well, I mean,
That's
I
what I
know
wanna
because I
know.
priced them. and
No, I
bought-
understand that, but you never know that somebody's going to get a deal. Or even like when we did our stormwater program.
Well, the value, I
right,
should
we
say,
gave-
not the cost, but the value.
Well, no, but I think it should be the cost. I mean, look, if a homeowner for some reason was able to get a rain barrel for $15,
Oh, right,
and they
but we're
want to
asking
get
for
reimbursed by
receipts.
the right.
Then
Well,
the-
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't just be. What I thought I heard you say was it was just $50.
No, what I'm saying is if I spend 50, I want more. I want more than $50.
Oh, yeah. I'm saying
Because
you-
that's kind of an easy one. The rain garden, I want to incentivize more because it's going to take more from the homeowner. To put in a rain barrel is less of an effort to put in a rain garden. So we're not fully funding the rain garden, so I don't know if we should fully fund the rain barrel.
Gotcha. And I agree.
Yeah, but $50, I mean, there is cost of, there's the
So,
barrel.
so you're
there's-
telling me it's not fully funded at 50?
No.
That's all I needed to know.
No, there's no way.
Yeah,
I can't
because I
see
had
how
no
it would be.
idea.
Unless, I guess if you wanted to go get somebody's, sloppy
I don't
Joe's
know.
old rusty rain.
No,
barrel.
no,
You know what
I mean, but you're going to
let's-
need a receipt. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the value is beyond what we're
Right.
reimbursing. That's what I'm asking.
That's
So we will spend some time looking at Home Depot costs of things so that we can all see what's, and we'll send out a note saying what the range of prices is with installation. I don't know, there's that diverter that goes on the spout and all that stuff. So
But I guess my point was, I don't see anything that we've talked about here that should take us a year to go figure out.
No,
it should
I
take
gue-
us
I
a
guess-
couple days to go figure out. Like, we got to move this on, and I do think we absolutely should do this year. I don't think we should wait.
No, I think we should too. But I think, like we were saying, though, you do need the administrator in place to actually roll it out, but you don't need it to identify. But I just want you to understand where I'm coming from is that I would like to incentivize the most beneficial over
Okay.
the less beneficial.
could I ask a question of Steve? Steve, if we have a document like this that's going to go out to the public, who does it go through to be, who needs to approve it before it goes to the Board of Commissioners?
Would this be something we would actually mail out, or would it be something we just put on the website?
No, I think it's on the website, but I mean, before we put it out. So, I mean, who has to look at it?
What it would do is whatever this committee deems it wishes to do, that should go to the Board of Commissioners, because this is one of the tasks you were charged with through the resolution that put you folks together, right, that made this
No,
group.
I'm saying so that we have it complete and ready for the Board of Commissioners. For instance, there's a legal question, so,
He would say to me, Steve, send this to the solicitor and see if he's okay with it.
okay. Is there anybody else that needs to look at it?
I would run it by the manager, but really, this goes to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
I really want to go back to the original question about putting together the specifications before we ask the commissioners for approval, because we had the very good opening question about what's going to be, how much benefit are you going to get from this investment in each of these options? And you can't answer that. For rain barrels, sure. But for these other opportunities, you can't answer that until you know the size of the cistern, the size of the rain garden, all of those things. And I don't think it's fair or appropriate for us to go to the commissioners and say, we want you to approve a program that's going to potentially result in the expenditure of $50,000 from our stormwater user fee fund, but we're not going to give you the details necessary to assess the potential level of effectiveness. I don't think that's fair to the commissioners. I think that they're going to expect more from us, and I frankly would want to give them more. I think we should proceed with the goal and hope that we can have implementation this year. You know, you can do good, healthy plantings in the fall. You know, spring may be ideal, but you can do them in the fall. So I think we should proceed in hopes of getting this all together and approved and out the door this year. But I don't think we should skimp on giving the commissioners the full level of information that we would want to have in order to approve a $50,000 expenditure of stormwater fee money.
But
Well,
I
wanna-
don't think it's that hard to come
Well-
up with. I mean, there are certain standards, and especially, I mean, you have so much experience in this. I'm sure you have details that you dream of, like at night, because you look at it all day long, that we could come up with details.
But I want to point out
It
that.
doesn't seem like it would take months to do, that we could come
That's-
up with.
that's my
Can
point. We're
I
not-
just want to point out that, for instance, for a rain garden, only of the applications I looked at, you know, around the country, only one gave even a surface square footage. So if you know specifications that we can use, that's great, but there aren't a lot out there. They just say rain garden. So if we want to be rigorous about this, we can.
But there are details for plantings, for depth, for, I mean, I just think we need
That's
to
great, that's great.
decide
They're not usually
how-
on
I
the
just-
application.
That's all he's saying. I mean, and
There's a-
and he does, believe me, Paul does great work, but he also does fantastic research. He just didn't dream this up.
But if people just
He went
plant,
and researched about, how many, 50 different, some ridiculous number of municipalities. That's what-
Nobody's denigrating Paul's work.
And I'm not-
Nobody is trying to be
No, no.
dismissive of that. But, you know, we are building on the experiences of other communities. So we're taking some of their good works and we're adding our good works to get specifications for a rain garden. I think Heather's point's well taken. This is not something, that's why I said we should proceed as though we're going to try to accomplish this year.
Okay.
We're not talking
I'm-
about
I'm-
another year worth of work, but I am not comfortable putting forth to the commissioners a piece of work that I feel is missing some fundamental pieces that
Okay.
they should have.
I have very little energy around this. I'm fine with going back and getting specifications. I just need help because there's nothing in the applications. And so those of you who are in the field can send us specifications. Great, we'll put them in the application.
I think that's wise, and we have to look at our specification, because a lot of times when we do rain gardens, we go several feet deep. No homeowner is going to go several feet deep, right? All incentive is lost. But there is a boatload of details that we could easily attach, and that'll be the minimum requirement: a certain depth, a certain soil content, and whatever the benefit is you get.
Is it something that, I'm sure Maya probably has details readily available. I have details that
Okay,
we
great.
could pass around this week and discuss, and
I can send you some, it's not a
we
problem.
can look at the ordinance, even what Radnor has, and just quantify it, because I think really that's the only issue, is to quantify it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the rain garden and the cistern are going to be the only two we have to quantify. The others are diverting the roof leaders, and then the other, the rain barrels.
Okay,
And once
good.
we know that size, I think there's no reason that we couldn't put a memorandum together and get something moving.
So we're aiming to have a final document to the BOC by next meeting. Is that fair?
No, because I'm going away for 4 days, and I haven't had a vacation day in about 3 years, and I'm going to take my 4 days.
When's the next?
We have
There's
a month.
meeting. There's a meeting the end of February, right, Steve, for the board?
23rd?
The 23rd.
You're saying we'll have the final details at our next meeting
right.
so that
That's what
we
I'm saying.
can
Not
make a
theirs.
motion and
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yes, that's what I'm
That-
saying.
Which would be great, because then we could possibly get on the end of the March Board of Commissioners meeting, since our meeting is early. Okay. Does that sound good? Okay, great.
Next.
So we jumped ahead a little bit to the residential incentive. We just wanted to wait till Regina and Steve were present to talk about the stormwater administrator.
So who's starting it?
And I'm assuming everyone was emailed from Steve, the revised costs? Everyone had a chance to look at it? Okay.
So how do you want to proceed? I mean, I'm happy to make a motion. on who to vote upon, if that's what we need to start discussion.
I think we're ready to take a vote.
So I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommendation of CH2M Hill, or the proposal, or
You mean you want to make a motion that
we approve,
we
that we recommend, yes, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners that they accept the proposal from CH2M Hill. Thank you for the help on the language, Regina.
I'll second it. I'm sorry, did you?
And I'll third it, but I'd like to, I think on behalf of everybody, we'd like to thank both parties for giving us such good, strong proposals and coming out and meeting with us. And I mean, I think it was a good thing for everybody.
Well, no, there's something else that, in addition to selecting a firm, I just wanted to talk about costs. I know there were things that we talked about we definitely wanted, and that we should provide the board with some sort of recommendation as well. I know we talked about the GIS system, how important in managing it, and the billing, but there were other areas, especially with the recent request for additional or revised proposals. Is there a fee or an amount that we want to cap out for I think it was number 3, the project administration requests and proposals? We had talked about capping that, I think, back in November or December.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Well, there were certain things we talked about we wanted done, but I know item number 3 for project administration, that could be a costly area. And I just didn't know if we wanted to provide a recommendation as to a cap of we're okay with up to, $50,000 or $25,000 for things pertaining to requests for proposals and things of that nature.
Because just remember, everything you have the stormwater administrator do, whether it be receiving the credit applications and processing them. So your first couple of tasks were very well defined, the GIS system, the turnkey billing, and then there's a little bit more nebulous area where at one point for the basis of the proposal, we had them use a fixed number that the committee came up with. But my request to this commission would be, so you're going to put together a memorandum outlining your choice of CH2M Hill and the costs, because then I need to put that into a legislative memo. So we definitely need to fix those costs as to what and I would recommend that you do, so that it's not just some open-ended item, so that in the middle of October you don't say, okay, we don't want to spend any more money until January.
So would it be appropriate to say, can we vote on the motion on the table in terms of the proposal and the administrator, and then to the extent that we want to make some additional recommendations for capping, we go and do that as a separate motion for clarity?
I think so. I guess I'm a little confused as to the open-endedness of this proposal to begin with. I thought it had some caps built into it, basically. And
There was a $15,000 cap that this committee told for the one item that they had both companies use as part of their total cost proposal. If you remember.
right, and if we don't activate any, we don't pay anything. We as Radnor.
Yeah, you're going to pay something no matter what. Because
No,
you're gonna
I'm
come to
saying for
meeting.
that item. The rest of it's pretty much a fixed.
The first 2 items are very well fixed.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a little confused as to how complicated that really needs to be.
Just take the vote, and then we can discuss that if we need to.
Vote on just the costs? Or vote on firm? I thought we voted.
No, we didn't vote yet. We had a first, second, and a third, but we didn't have
Oh,
an
I'm
actual
sorry.
vote on the motion.
We should just do it separately for the firm first. Absolutely. Yes.
Does anyone want to make a statement as to, something in particular that's leaning you there so that we can support our recommendation with reasons? Does someone have, in particular, for me, their familiarity with the location of the middle school and the work that they did previously, stormwater-wise, for the middle school, It was the overlay for the business district, the Wayne Business Overlay. So they are familiar with, and this goes back to, we had how many proposals to start with, so it goes back to that. So that's important to me, is that someone who really knows our site and is familiar with what the history. So that for me, that's a plus. I mean, for as long as I've lived here, they've been involved in things local, stormwater.
The comment I would make is, again, I speak as a non-expert, of someone when they came in at the last meeting and had experts from the different areas, so that, everything could be interpreted and understood from different perspectives. So the planner they had there and all the other folks. So I thought that was good. I really appreciate that.
So what I really appreciated was the how they were building upon their knowledge and experiences in other municipalities in the proposal that they offered to Radnor, but that they didn't try to cookie cutter us, right? So that they were taking knowledge and experience in other local communities, but then trying to learn from that in crafting a proposal that would serve Radnor's specific needs, but also leaving in the process some real junctures where key information from Radnor would be elicited in order to ensure, right, that we were getting exactly what we need in these certain areas. And it was based on their expertise and their experiences that they understood where those junctures were, right, where they needed to collect that additional information to make sure that they were making a Radnor value-added program. And so for me, that was very valuable, in addition to the point Regina made.
I was going to say, just one last, I like the fact that they want to put themselves out of business.
I think you need to explain that in case people weren't at the last meeting.
The point, yes, not put themselves out of business, put themselves out of business with us. In other words, that they design their program so that we become more self-sufficient over time.
Right.
Yes, it's poorly worded first time.
So they'll phase out their involvement as
Thank
a
you.
consultant.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I may have been confusing. So CH2M Hill's total proposal for the year was 128,000 and some change. And that's what this commission is putting forth to go to the Board of Commissioners with. So we'll put that in a memo. I'll attach that to the legislation. Great, thank you.
When do you need the memo by? In time for their February meeting?
Sorry, we won't make the 23rd, so it would be the March meeting.
March 9th is their next meeting? Or the 16th?
I have it right here, pardon, just one sec. The March 9th is Board of Commissioners, and there's a subsequent one on March 23rd.
And our next meeting will be on the 12th, it'll be after that. So what I can do is draft something, send it to everyone for their input prior to the meeting.
Yeah, I think we need to include some of the background, and as well, I think some explanation on whether or not some of that funding would ever be exxited.
Right, and because-
especially in this first year, because we're heavy on some fees this year because it's a startup cost, and we may never even get around to using that much for requests for proposals and so forth.
In my one-page synopsis, I will have to note, this was CHM2's cost, this was AMEC's proposal, and then this committee is going to really provide all that backup as to why you wish to use CH2M Hill for these professional services.
Anything else for discussion?
So.
For discussion on this topic, and then,
In your experience, if we went in March, how soon would the administrator be working?
There's a professional services agreement that they have. Our solicitor would look at that. It could be the matter of a couple of weeks, insurance certificates, and they could be on board. It's very quick item, as long as there's no, tangles in the actual agreement. I don't see an issue why in a week or so they wouldn't be up and running, so to speak.
That'd be the next question. How soon can we get them?
My thought would be they're going to be in place for the following month's meeting, and they would be in place prior to that, and they, email you folks, and you could start.
So with that in mind, do we want to have any further discussion on the Ithan Creek RFP, which, was in pretty good shape?
So if you wish to do that, and based on his RFP, CH2M Hills, I would need another memo to the Board of Commissioners to get authorization to do that.
I guess we had talked about potentially just awarding the work rather than, and we need to learn more about process. We really do, as to what your options are to getting smaller things done rather than larger things. We really need to fully understand what is at your disposal.
I can make it very simple. I think we discussed it. So basically, anything over $7,500 is going to go to the board. Okay?
Right, but as far as go to the board for approval, but however, we don't always have to go out and request proposals. We can
No, and
ask a particular firm, whether it be Gannett Fleming, since they're in-house,
Or CH2M Hill,
or any other firm we've done business with.
Absolutely. And you can get that cost proposal. Again, it goes with a memorandum, and then I would go to the board, basically stating this is what the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee wishes. So you do not, professional services do not require RFPs. We often do them just for comparative sake to see what these different costs are. But you do have that option. You have an in-house firm. There's other firms that are very well known that you may wish to use for specific projects. We actually, in the original RFP, we kept the Stormwater Administrator out of all that so they could concentrate their time on servicing this committee and overseeing some of those projects as opposed to getting deep into one of the projects. But that's really your call.
Yeah, and so if it were a final design project, that would make sense that we would want to kind of steer that in a different direction than, say, a study or
Right, especially
a
if they write
feasibility.
if you do go to RFP and they write it, obviously they would have to back out immediately. I mean, they're not part of that.
And the other question that came to mind is the way that we're operating with our funds is different than the way we need to operate if we get any grant funds. Certain funds have attachments as to how the consultant is selected. So we can always use Gannett Fleming. They've been selected through the PennDOT process.
A lot of times, though, the grant, we're just going through a round of grants. A lot of times, they still want to see the RFP process. Others are different. Like I say, we have a resolution that has appointed Gannett Fleming, so there's oftentimes you could just give it to them. But again, all grant applications also go through the Board of Commissioners. So we would request authorization to apply for a grant. That would go to the board also.
Okay, I mean, yeah, not everyone understands that there's differences in how you can spend your money based on
Right.
where it comes from, so.
And you're spending, like I say, so the manager can spend up to $7,500. So if it was something approved, it could be done administratively. Over $7,500 and under $25,000 can be approved by the board. Over $25,000 is going to usually be a sealed bid. Not unless it's a consultant, but if it's a specific project.
Well, but back to the question that I asked, though, per the conversation, first public comment we had, I'd really like to see us get moving on the Ithan study.
Now, then my question is, do you want to put that out for an RFP, or do you want to ask a particular consultant to give you a proposal? That's why I brought up what I brought up.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
So you could get that proposal from whatever consultant you wish, review it. We may make some changes, get it, and then you could go to the board with that proposal, if you wish.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, for those of us who are not doing this for a living, could you explain what an advantage or disadvantage of one versus the other?
In particular, with this proposal that we're talking about, it's not a final design job, and it's kind of, in my mind, it would be beneficial to just have the stormwater administrator do the work, because they'd be the one putting it in the GIS system. They'd be that much more familiar with what's going on here in the township and able to offer that advice to us. And then as we go forward into solving some of these problems with final design projects, we would be looking for someone else to do that work for any number of reasons. For one, to keep them focused on the administrator job, as well as to bring in a second opinion on how to best address the problem.
So it's the nature of this particular project that makes it.
But you could actually go one step further. So there could be this study of the Ithan watershed with solutions. So you can bring this further in the design process from a time standpoint by having whatever firm do the study and come up with very specific recommendations, so you're that much closer to your final design, because the process can stretch on for as long as you wish it to, but you can there's also methods to shorten that, and that's just a suggestion just to think about. It can get you one step closer, and from that wouldn't be final design, that would be solutions. From that report, from that whole study, a final design could be done by whichever firm you choose.
And I think that Regina very well put forth why it makes sense to have the stormwater administrator do this. We can get going faster. There's a lot of value in doing it, because we're going to have some synergy between what they're doing for the administrator position and on this work. And so we, maybe get some better rates out of it and some better work out of it. And I think also, in all of the conversations that we've had about the stormwater administrator, one of the reasons why people really had, there were a lot of reasons people had good feelings towards each of the candidates, but one of the reasons people had particularly good feelings towards CH2M Hill is because they do have pre-existing knowledge of this particular part of the township. And so they're not going to be starting from scratch. They don't have to come up to speed. A number of their staff members are already fully up to speed based on their previous work. So we are starting, 5 steps ahead if we go with this particular administrator, rather than going out to RFP, getting bids, and then choosing somebody who's going to start 5 steps behind.
So then, in the same vein of the memorandum, could the memorandum just be expanded to also either that or a separate memorandum because I really do think we should get the Ithan watershed study going soon.
We could have CH2M Hill provide a cost proposal for the work. We could go to the board with both. The first memo is the Stormwater Manager Advisory Committee has picked CH2M Hill to be the stormwater administrator. Second memo, they provided a proposal of X dollars to do this work. We would like to get that authorized, so you could do 2 in one night.
The only thing is, do we see that before they see it? How is that working?
I'll be honest, until the administrator is on, it'll be my job to still go through that proposal to make sure it meets your needs. I would very strongly suggest it go to this committee, especially with the background of some of the members, to make sure it meets everything you're thinking of. I write proposals and I review proposals, and very often it's just a different matter of thinking, but you see something where you say, this really needs to be a part of it, it's not. We note that to the consultant. We also say, we really don't want this. Here's our comments, give us another proposal, a refined proposal with a new cost. So I definitely think this committee needs to review that, and then we go back with comments, because this is really what we were talking about doing. You folks are in on the ground floor of what's going out, so you want to make sure that the proposal meets your needs, or what you feel are the needs of the township.
How does that work with timing, though? Is that going to delay the recommendation?
Well, you could still do, even if, let's say the proposal portion wasn't done, you could still get them on as stormwater administrator on the 9th, and then on the second meeting, we do the cost proposal.
That's
for the
what I would
study.
prefer. I'd rather not delay the first.
I think,
I
and I think
agree.
it gives you folks more time
Yes.
to review what that proposal is.
Well, then what I will do is I'll draft a memo. I'll get it out to committee members within the next week to at least put forth the recommendation for the stormwater administrator. And then when we get some more feedback, we'll aim for that second memorandum for the second meeting in March for the board.
I'm sorry, I'm like a dog with a bone. So, Steve, is there anything that would stop you from writing an RFP? I mean, and
I
I
wouldn't
shouldn't
want to
say.
plagiarize Mr. Weibel.
Well,
We-
right,
we
and I
don't- we
wasn't
don't
going to
need
say,
one, though.
because you already have
Right.
very good examples that were close
I
to
do.
complete. So couldn't we let that process begin and,
Well, he's just requesting a cost proposal. That's all he
Right,
needs. He doesn't
right.
have to write an RFP.
Yeah.
Right, so
He
then.
I
just
mean,
has to ask them for a cost
He's very
proposal.
familiar with
But
it
there's
based
scope.
on,
But
basically what
the
he
scope
did.
is what's in the RFP, I guess is my point. So he should be able to just go do that and get a cost proposal.
Right, but my question was, will we see the cost proposal before the Board of Commissioner? I don't really even have an opinion on that either way. It's just
Right.
questioning. I don't want to hold up our original recommendation.
Agreed.
But I don't necessarily want to hold up the cost proposal if, Steve, you're happy with it.
It's, so
mean,
this
if
gets
it can
back to
move forward.
procedure. For us to go to request for proposal, we would need board approval.
No, for
Right.
to request a
Right,
proposal
for us
from
to go
them.
to, when I go to RFPs, I request authorization.
No,
from
no,
the board.
I'm saying a cost
I need to be-
proposal.
No,
I need
a
to
cost
be-
proposal we can
Right,
receive.
so that cost proposal, I don't know that we need to be in the middle of it, is what I'm saying, is maybe it's up to Steve to work out the details.
I can
and-
do
and
that
we're
very
done.
easily.
Because we all kind of know what we're looking for.
And I'll make sure that you see my comments and the final cost proposal that comes back.
And that's the only.
So we don't necessarily need to have a discussion at a meeting before we get that done.
No.
That's what I
That's-
was asking.
No.
Okay.
And so you're going to request a cost proposal.
Yes.
And
Dan,
when
can we
it-
have a cost proposal?
And when
No.
and when it comes in, we'll get to look at it, and whether it comes in before or after, we won't
Yes.
delay the meeting,
But we're going to shoot for having it reviewed by this committee, the final, and then go to the second meeting of the month for approval by the Board of Commissioners.
great.
So what I was saying is, I don't know that we really need to review it as a committee at a meeting.
Right, I wouldn't do it at a
couldn't-
meeting, I would just
Yeah, but
email it to you.
if we see it and give comments to Steve.
Right, I would
Right.
take your
It doesn't have to be a
comments.
formal discussion at a meeting.
No, just we would converse through email. I take your comments, send them back en masse to Dan, get that final cut, send it to you for your yay or nay, and we go.
And Regina, can you put that all in the form of a motion so that we can just sort of get it?
What he just said.
Yeah. Well, I
The
mean,
mo-
I just
the
think it would be
motion-
better
the
if we
motion
have
would
a
be
motion and it's voted upon so that
Request
we
a
have
cost
clarity.
proposal from CH2M Hill for the Iton Creek watershed study. That's your motion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Anyone second?
Not really allowed to say
Got
it.
that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded? For my records, thank you.
Hey, Steve, any word for the ordinance for Gannett Fleming?
Yes, so I'm going to have that to you by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And I'm also, when I give it to this committee, I'll be distributing it to other departments. So in community development, we have zoning. I want to make sure that, it works with them. And if I could, Madam Chair, I have one announcement to make
Sure.
before we wrap up. So Radnor Township is a member of the Chester Ridley Crum Watersheds Association. And this will be on the website, and I just wanted to announce that the CRC plus Penn State University Brandywine and CRC's Municipal Stormwater Partnership will hold a lecture on Sunday, March 8th at Penn State Brandywine, Sustainable Landscape Management for Landowners. That's posted on the website. It's free, presented by Jennifer Nichols, and it's at 2 p.m. on the campus's Temesco Building Auditorium. Just want to let everybody know.
And just another announcement, seeing as we're doing an announcement, on February 24th, it's going to be another one of the stormwater trainings offered by Friends to Preserve Radnor and the Eastwick Friends and Neighbor Coalition and the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, and that's going to be at the John Hines Refuge. And it's going to, doors open at 6:30, lecture to start at 6:45, lecture talk, and it's Dr. Steve Souza, who's a nationally recognized stormwater expert.
The last announcement, the township's new website's going to go live next Thursday or Friday. So we're working on it now, but once it goes up, I'd request that this commission take a look, because under engineering, there is going to be a Stormwater Management Advisory Commission section, and that's a great place for you folks to put all these types of things that you want, or just general information. You'll help me with my MS4 if you do that. I'd be greatly appreciated. So just a final.
One other thing, I did attend the PennDOT funding workshop, excellent workshop. I really think we need to move forward to partner with our neighbors and approach PennDOT. And I would like us as a committee to have a subcommittee for grants and other sources of funding. And that would be open to community members, and hopefully have some Board of Commissioners and maybe EAC members to participate. It's something that they're really, when the money's there, you have to go grab it. It may not last. Right now, PennDOT is very motivated to partner with municipalities who can give them a perfect example. We have flooding in front of a school, a firehouse, a library, and in our downtown area. What a feel-good project that would be to fund. You know what I'm saying? So now is the time, and I don't know how we formalize it, but at the next meeting, I want to discuss it further. And in the meanwhile, we do have some community members who have stepped up and volunteered to help with funding efforts. And Steve, whatever we need to do to coordinate with the Board of Commissioners as well as the town manager and the EAC, let's get that discussion going.
That's fantastic, absolutely.
And I saw we got a grant for our EAC. Please, Steve, announce that.
Are you talking about the rain garden grant? Yeah, so John Fisher with the C, not Commissioner Fisher. We received a rain garden grant. So really almost at the intersection of Creek and the driveway that comes in, there's going to be a somewhat long, almost a linear rain garden. And we're partnering with them, and I offer this to any community group in the township. We've done others. So Public Works will do some of the heavy lifting. We're going to dig the hole. Sometimes they supply the soil. If it's in my operating budget, I'll try to supply the soil. And then the volunteer groups can do all the plantings. They purchase the plantings and they do it, and the paper comes and snaps some photos. So if anybody's listening, we did it in Garrett Hill. We did it at Cowan Park. Public Works and Engineering is an eager partner in any rain garden. And this one is great because grant money will cover the plants. We'll take care of the other end, and so it's going to be pretty neat.
Would the township even help with a project that's on Radnor Township School District grounds?
We've done 2 in parks, but I don't see why that would be an issue. We have a very good relationship with Leo Burnaby, the facilities director over there. And if it's all nonprofits working together, which is basically what we work with, I don't see that that'd be an issue. Great educational item. And again, we'll notch that up in our MS4 column.
On that happy note, do we have any further public comment?
Chip Layfield, Wayne. I just wanted to give you my impression of the incentive program. It's kind of confusing when I see one time, that would jump really out at me, one-time effort. I think, because I would think, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to do just the stormwater barrel, or am I going to do the garden? I think you might want to conceptualize it differently, as like you would have a amount of credits that you could get, and you could have line items giving different values to every credit, and only get that one credit one time for a rain barrel or 3 rain barrels, whatever it would be. Because I think otherwise, it's not going to be understood. And I would also think you'd want to have a time on it too, like 3 years, and then it expires or can be renewed. So you have a time to evaluate the process. Is it working? Isn't it working? Instead of just this open-ended process. So those are 2 things that jumped out at me, that it seems like it needs a sunset clause, not to kill it, but just to make sure that it gets reevaluated. And maybe a pool of credits, like when you buy appliances, like Energy Star appliance or something, you can get collect them. And the other question was a process question. You were talking about communications with the township, and I did receive the letter from the committee in my stormwater bill. And I asked my commissioner if they approved it, and he said they hadn't approved it, they didn't see it. And I haven't seen every meeting, but I have read the minutes. And I don't remember this board discussing that letter or, asking for public comments. And I was just wondering what the process was.
I wrote the letter, and it was just a basic summary of what we worked on during the year. It was something that I emailed all our committee members. It was something that Steve Nursini, Bob had seen it, and it was emailed to the commissioners as well long before it was ever publicized, just so you know. This was something that I just, wasn't just thrown out there.
My
but
commissioner said he wasn't aware of.
I can tell you for a fact that it was emailed to all the commissioners, to Steve, to Bob, all our committee members for
Okay.
for feedback, to make it the best summary of the year as possible.
Well, ultimately, they're accountable. So, the normal process is you would make a letter, the board, it goes to the commissioners, they edit it, whatever, and goes out from them. I don't think I've ever received a letter from a chair of a committee before. It was kind of a strange process.
And again, it was just a summary, because I don't know how familiar the community really is with us. We're a new committee and what we're working on. It was just a jumping off point to say, hey, we're here. These are some of the things we're looking at. This is what we've accomplished in 1 year. But it was not something that needs a formal approval for a summary of what we worked on. But it was definitely emailed to the appropriate people, which would be our committee, Radnor Township, and to all the commissioners, so that they had input long before it ever went out.
Okay, good. Yes, because I was thinking, not this committee, I can see it's very hardworking, but I can imagine some committees, there might be a opportunity for self-promotion and things like that.
No.
Yeah, okay, good. As long as everybody had a chance to look at it.
No,
Well, but I do think that that's a fair point, because I don't recall having discussion over the letter or getting the letter, that it was dialogued about in this committee. So I think it is a fair point that when we're doing communications that are coming out from the committee or a summary of the committee, I'd like to see us have a process where it actually comes before the committee, it's on the agenda for discussion, so everybody can get input and have edits and feel comfortable with what it's saying, and that it really comes out from the committee, or it comes out from the commissioners, but that it doesn't come out from a single individual. This is all a group effort, and personally, I think it should go from the commissioners, but if it does come from the committee, I'd like to see it genuinely come from the committee and go through a process and have a resolution, and we all vote. So there's no question that everybody was comfortable with it.
Right, and it was something that, I'd be more than happy to pull out our past notes. It was something that I talked about doing. Everyone seemed to be in agreement, and I did email to everyone on this committee. I'm more than happy to email it to you again, what I sent out, but I would not send one piece of paper out in something like that regard that I didn't have everyone look at.
Okay, well, I went through all the meeting minutes because I was asked, and there wasn't a single mention of it in any meeting minute, and I couldn't find a single email about it. And I went through all my emails because I was asked. And I didn't have an answer because I didn't have a record, and I don't delete any of my emails. They're all set aside. But that being said, that's the past. I think going forward, we should have a process, and I would like to see us have a process where, again, so there's absolute clarity, no question, that any documents that are going out to the public from this committee, like we did tonight with these materials, it's on the agenda, it's discussed, there's a resolution, it's voted upon, it moves or it doesn't move.
Well, I'll make sure I'll get you that email, just so you know, I'm on the up and up. If there's anything else for discussion?
I'll let you go. But on a high note, Chip, I really appreciate all your feedback. I learned a lot. I really did. And I think, we had personally been talking about stuff like every 3 years, but it's a good point because we want to incentivize, not de-incentivize folks. And you shouldn't have to be deciding, do you want to use it now or use it next year?
Well, last year, people will be, we have to
Right.
Y-
But your energy is what we're hoping to.
Yeah, and I think you have no idea how valuable your input is, because when we're on this side of it and looking at it, you see it in a very different way. So bring friends next time and make more comment.
Anything else? So our next meeting will be March 12th. If there's nothing else, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. I'm assuming everyone's in favor. It's 8:55, we're 5 minutes early.